I'm Linda, 70 years old. I know that sounds ancient to some people, but if you ask me, I'm still going strong. Or at least I thought I was, until this Thanksgiving. I'd spent decades raising my family, making sure everything was perfect for everyone else. And for the first time in years, I felt like I finally had a little bit of peace. My husband passed away a while ago, and the kids, well, they've grown up and moved on with their lives. The empty nest was a bit lonely at first, but I got used to it. I found hobbies, made new friends, and even started doing a bit of traveling on my own. It was good for me. I had become someone who was content on her own. But then, one day, my son, Greg, called me and told me he missed me. It was around early November, and I could hear the excitement in his voice. "Mom, we miss you. Come fly out for Thanksgiving. It's been too long. Please, we want you here." At first, I didn't even think twice. I thought, how sweet, how thoughtful. Maybe it was the loneliness creeping back in, but I was touched. So I immediately agreed. They hadn't invited me in years, but I figured maybe things had changed. Maybe they realized how important I was to them. I didn't want to overthink it, he asked, and I agreed. I started planning my trip. I packed my bags, excited for the family reunion, for the chance to see everyone. Thanksgiving was going to be different this year. For once, I wasn't going to spend it alone, and I felt a wave of relief as I thought about all the good memories I'd have with them. When the day finally came, I flew out. I landed in the city, and Greg was there waiting for me at the airport, a big smile on his face, looking more grown-up than I remembered. He wrapped his arms around me in a hug that almost knocked the air out of me, and I could feel his warmth, his affection. He told me how happy he was that I was there and how much he'd missed me. But then we drove to the house. That's when things started to feel off. When I walked in, I didn't immediately notice anything strange. It was the usual: Greg and his wife, Amanda, the kids running around, the smell of turkey wafting through the air. Everyone was there, it seemed. But then, as I walked into the living room, I saw it. A large family photo hanging on the wall, one of those professional ones they always took at the holidays. They were all in it: Greg, his wife, the kids, even their dog. But there was no space for me. No spot for me in their picture. No one had thought to include me in this seemingly perfect family photo. It hit me like a ton of bricks. I stood there for a moment, staring at the picture. I didn't know what to do with myself. No one had warned me. No one had said anything about a family photo. They just let me walk in and see it. The photo wasn't just a picture. It was a statement. A statement that, despite their words, I wasn't part of their family anymore. They had made a choice without telling me. They had already decided that I wasn't worth including. I turned to Greg, who had been watching me closely as I lingered by the photo. His smile had faltered. I could see it in his eyes. He knew what I was thinking. But there was no apology, no explanation. He just stood there, looking at me like he was waiting for me to say something. "Greg," I said, my voice colder than I intended. "What is this? What is this supposed to mean?" He looked at the photo, then at me. His expression was a mix of guilt and something I couldn't quite place. He hesitated before answering, shifting on his feet. "Mom, I didn't think it would be a big deal. It's just a photo, you know? We didn't want to make you feel uncomfortable. We thought it'd be easier for everyone." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Easier for who? I asked, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. "Easier for you? Or easier for me?" "I didn't mean to hurt you," he stammered. "We didn't want to make it awkward. You've always said you didn't want to be a burden, so we didn't. We didn't want to make you feel out of place." "Out of place," I repeated, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. I looked at the photo again, the faces of my children and grandchildren smiling back at me, but not me. "You didn't want me to feel out of place, or did you just not want me in the picture at all?" Greg didn't respond at first. He just stared at the ground, avoiding my eyes, and that's when I realized the moment of clarity hit me like a wave. All these years I had been fighting to hold on to a family that wasn't really mine anymore. They had moved on. They had started their own lives, and I had been clinging to the idea of what we used to be. I had thought that if I just tried harder, if I just gave more, they would see me. But they didn't. They didn't even think to ask if I wanted to be in their photo. I stood there for a moment, my heart heavy, my breath shallow, and then I did something I didn't expect. I turned and walked out of the room. I didn't shout, I didn't argue. I just left. I walked straight through the kitchen, grabbed my coat, and headed for the door. "Mom, wait," Greg's voice called after me, but I didn't stop. I didn't look back. I drove straight to a hotel, not caring about the distance, not caring about anything but getting away from the lies, away from the family that didn't want me, away from the people I had spent my whole life giving to, who had forgotten me the moment it was inconvenient to remember me. Thanksgiving, once the holiday that I had looked forward to every year, had turned into a lesson that was long overdue. I wasn't going to wait for them to change. I wasn't going to beg for scraps of affection or validation. I didn't need their approval. I spent the next few days alone in that hotel room, thinking about what I had allowed myself to be, about how much I had given without ever asking for anything in return, about how I had waited for my children to realize how much I meant to them, only to find out that they had already made their decisions about me. When I came back home, I didn't call them. I didn't visit. I didn't send a message. They had done enough damage. They had made it clear that I wasn't needed, that I wasn't part of their perfect picture, and I wasn't going to waste another minute of my life trying to fit into their mold. So I made my own life. I filled it with things that mattered to me. I started traveling more, picking up hobbies I'd long abandoned, and learning to love my own company. And for the first time in years, I felt like I was living on my own terms. I didn't need them to tell me I was important. I had already figured that out. I was important. I mattered, and that was all I needed to know. And as for that family photo without me, well, I didn't need to be in it, because I was done waiting to be included in their picture. I was going to start living my own life, and that was the picture I wanted to be in. And that, my friends, was the moment everything changed. It's been a few weeks since that Thanksgiving fiasco, and I've spent a lot of time thinking about what happened. The thing is, I always thought that the longer I held on to my family, the more they would come around. I thought that if I just kept showing up, if I just kept being the mother they needed me to be, eventually they would realize that I was more than just the person they called when it was convenient. I was wrong. The truth is, I wasn't even on their radar anymore, and I had been too blind to see it. After I walked out of Greg's house that day, I went straight to the hotel, checked into a small room by the beach, and just sat there. I didn't cry, though I thought I might. I didn't scream, even though I wanted to. I just sat in silence, looking out at the ocean, trying to make sense of everything. I had been invited, I had thought things were finally going to be different, and then I saw that photo, the photo, without me. It felt like the punchline to a joke I hadn't been in on, a cruel joke. When I got back home, I didn't immediately reach out to anyone. I didn't text Greg or even leave a message on his voicemail. I just sat with my anger. But the more I sat with it, the more I realized something. I didn't want their pity. I didn't want to be the sad old mom who they felt sorry for, the one they invited just out of obligation. I didn't want to be included because they thought it would be easier for everyone else. A few days later, Greg texted me, "Mom, we're sorry. Can we talk? We didn't mean to hurt you." That was it. That was the message. No real explanation. No apology. Just a line thrown out as if it was a lifeline, expecting me to grab hold of it. But I didn't. I couldn't. I had given so much of myself to them, and for what? To be treated like I was invisible. To be cast aside when they decided they had more important things to do. I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the screen as I considered replying. But then I remembered the photo, the image of their perfect family, standing together with smiles without me. I didn't need their empty words. I didn't need the apology. I needed them to understand that it wasn't just about being excluded from a photograph. It was about how they had stopped seeing me as a person, as someone who had given them everything. Instead of replying to Greg, I went out. I went to a local park and just walked. I didn't know where I was going, but I needed to get out of my house, away from the walls that felt like they were closing in on me. As I walked through the park, the leaves falling around me, I couldn't help but think of how far I'd let myself slip. I had spent so much time focusing on everyone else's needs that I had forgotten about my own. I used to be someone who traveled, someone who made things happen, someone who had a voice. But over the years, I had become just the backdrop to everyone else's lives. I was always the one who waited, the one who showed up when they needed me, the one who was there to take care of the details. But it was time to stop waiting. Time to stop being the woman who was always in the background. When I got home, I did something that surprised even me. I started researching solo trips. I didn't need anyone's permission to go. I didn't need anyone's approval. I had the money. I had the time. Why not? Why not take my own trip, the way I wanted to, the way I deserved to? That night, I booked a flight to Europe. I didn't tell anyone, not Greg, not my friends, not anyone. I didn't need to. I didn't need to justify it. I was going for me. The next few days felt like a new kind of freedom. For the first time in ages, I wasn't thinking about what anyone else needed from me. I wasn't wondering if I was still important to them. I wasn't waiting for the phone to ring. I was just living. I bought new luggage, packed my bags, and arranged everything for the trip. I was going to explore, to rediscover parts of myself I'd forgotten about. On the day I left, I felt a strange sense of excitement mixed with apprehension. I was nervous about traveling alone, but I was also exhilarated. This was mine. This was my decision. I wasn't doing this for anyone else. I wasn't doing this to please anyone. I was doing it because I wanted to. As I boarded the plane, a quiet peace settled over me. I wasn't leaving because I was angry. I wasn't running away from my family. I was running towards something I had lost, myself. The woman I used to be before I became just mom, just grandma. The woman who took risks, who didn't care what other people thought, who had dreams of her own. And as the plane took off, I looked out the window at the ground below, knowing I was finally free. Free from expectations, free from the role I had been forced into, and free from the need to be seen by anyone other than myself. A few days into the trip, I got a call from Greg. I was sitting in a cafe in Paris, sipping coffee and watching the people walk by. The Eiffel Tower loomed in the background, and for the first time in years, I felt a sense of peace. "Mom," Greg's voice sounded distant. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I've been thinking a lot about everything, and I realized I hurt you. I've been selfish." I took a breath, letting the words sink in. It was a simple apology, but there was something different about it. Maybe it was the fact that he was finally acknowledging the hurt. Maybe it was the fact that he was finally seeing me for who I was. But I wasn't ready to forgive him, not yet. "I'm glad you see it, Greg," I said softly, looking out at the city. "But it's not just about an apology. It's about showing up. It's about proving that you see me." "I will, Mom. I promise. I'll do better." I didn't know what the future held for us. I didn't know if things could ever go back to how they were. But I wasn't worried about that anymore. I wasn't waiting for them to change, for them to fix things. I was changing, and that was enough. As I hung up the phone, I looked around the cafe, feeling the pulse of life all around me. I had spent so many years waiting for someone to see me, to include me, to recognize my worth. But in that moment, I realized something important. I didn't need them to see me. I had learned to see myself. And that was the most freeing feeling of all. So I didn't go back right away. I stayed in Europe a little longer. I explored, I met new people, and I discovered parts of myself that I had forgotten. And when I did return home, I was different. I was stronger, and I no longer needed their approval to feel whole. And when I walked into their house again, I wasn't the same woman who had left. I was someone new, someone who knew her worth. And for the first time, I didn't need to be in their picture. I already had my own. I returned home a month later after what had been the most transformative time of my life. The trip to Europe wasn't just about sightseeing or escaping from my family. It was about reclaiming myself, rediscovering the parts of me I had buried for too long. I had been so busy taking care of everyone else that I forgot about the woman who used to laugh freely, the woman who could be just herself, outside of all the roles I had come to wear so easily: mother, grandmother, caregiver. When I walked through the door of my house, I felt different. I didn't feel the weight of expectation that had always been there before. I had changed. I had learned to live for me, and that wasn't something I was willing to let go of just because things with Emily and the rest of the family weren't perfect yet. Greg hadn't called much while I was away. I didn't expect him to, and honestly, I wasn't sure if I even wanted him to. I needed time to reflect on what had happened, on the hurt I'd carried for so long. But I knew that at some point I'd have to deal with it, address the space between us, and whether or not I was ready to let him back in. I didn't wait for him to reach out. After a few days of being home, I sent him a text. "We need to talk when you get a chance." It wasn't a demand. It wasn't meant to be threatening. But I needed to address everything, and I wasn't going to hide from it anymore. A few hours later, my phone buzzed. It was Greg. He asked if I wanted to meet at the same restaurant we used to visit when he was younger, the one where we used to go for Sunday brunch, laughing over pancakes and eggs, back when life felt simpler. I wasn't sure if that was where I wanted to meet him, but I agreed anyway. It was familiar, and sometimes familiarity was comforting. When I arrived, Greg was already there, sitting at a booth near the window. He looked up as I approached and stood up quickly, as though he was unsure of how to greet me. His smile was tentative, but there was sincerity in his eyes. "Mom," he said, his voice a little tight, "I'm glad you're back. I've missed you." I sat down across from him, my hands folded on the table. The weight of what we needed to discuss hung between us, unspoken but palpable. I wasn't here for small talk. I wasn't here to pretend everything was okay. Not anymore. "I've missed you too, Greg," I said softly, looking at him without the anger or bitterness I thought I might feel. "But we need to talk. About the holidays, about that photo, about everything, really." Greg shifted in his seat, his face flushing a little. "I know, Mom. I know. And I'm so sorry. I've been thinking about it nonstop since you left, and I get it now. I see it. I see how much I hurt you." He sounded genuine, but I had to hold on to my resolve. The apology wasn't enough, not yet. I needed to hear more. I needed him to understand the depth of what had happened, not just the surface-level hurt. "Greg," I began, "I've spent my life giving everything to this family. Everything I had, all my energy, all my time. I've made so many sacrifices for you, for Emily, for the grandkids, and I've never once asked for anything in return. But that photo—" I paused, my voice catching for a moment. That photo was the final straw. It wasn't just about being left out of a picture. It was about being left out of your life. I wasn't just ignored, I was erased. Greg didn't speak for a moment, his eyes dropping to the table as he processed my words. I could tell he was uncomfortable, but I wasn't going to spare him the discomfort. He needed to feel it. He needed to understand just how deeply his actions had hurt me. "I wasn't even given the chance to be part of your life anymore, Greg. And you know what? That hurt worse than anything. You've made me feel invisible, like I don't matter anymore, like I'm just something you have to deal with. But I'm not some obligation. I'm your mother. I'm someone who deserves to be treated with respect. I've always been there for you, but I can't keep showing up for you when you can't even bother to see me." There it was, the truth I had been holding inside for so long, and once I said it out loud, I could feel the weight lifting off my chest, the bitterness starting to melt away. I wasn't angry anymore. I was tired. Tired of being invisible. Tired of being overlooked. Tired of being the one who always had to make the effort. Greg was quiet for a long time, and when he finally spoke, his voice was shaky. "I didn't mean to make you feel that way, Mom. I really didn't. I was just caught up in everything, I guess, and I didn't think about how it would affect you. I thought it would be easier, easier for you not to have to be part of the picture, not to be bothered. I was wrong. I was so wrong." The sincerity in his voice hit me harder than I expected. There was no deflection, no excuses, just the rawness of his regret. But I wasn't ready to forgive him just yet. I wasn't ready to pretend everything was fine because he said the right words. "I don't need you to apologize, Greg. I need you to change," I said, looking him straight in the eye. "I need you to understand that I'm not just your mother. I'm not just a background figure in your life. I'm a person, and I've spent too many years giving without ever asking for anything in return." He nodded, his expression earnest. "I get it now, Mom. I really do. And I'm sorry. I'll do better. I'll be better." But there was something else I needed to say, something that had been weighing on me, something I hadn't fully realized until this moment. "You can't fix everything with just words," I said, my voice quieter now. "You can't just apologize and expect me to forget what happened. I need to see that you're willing to put in the effort, Greg. I need you to show me that I matter. You need to show up for me, not just when it's easy, but when it's hard." His eyes softened, and he reached out, putting his hand on top of mine. "I will, I swear. I'm not going anywhere, Mom. I'll do whatever it takes." I nodded slowly, the silence between us filling with the weight of everything we'd said. And then, for the first time in a long time, I felt a flicker of something. Hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, things could change. Maybe I could learn to trust him again. Maybe we could rebuild. But it wasn't going to be easy, and it wasn't going to be perfect. But for the first time, I was willing to try, and so was he. As we finished our meal, we didn't talk much more. But there was something unspoken between us, something I hadn't felt in years. Progress. We were moving forward, even if it was just one small step at a time. And that, I realized, was enough for now. It's been a few months since that conversation with Greg, and I've spent a lot of time reflecting on what happened, on where we are now. Things have been quieter between us, but in a way that's felt like a relief. There's no more tension, no more wondering when the next argument will happen, or when someone will say something that cuts too deep. I think, for the first time, we're both learning how to just be with each other, to live without the constant expectations and disappointments hanging over us. Greg has been doing better. Not perfect, but better. He calls more often, not because he feels like he has to, but because he wants to. I can see the effort, and that means more than any apology ever could. He's been more present in my life, showing up for the small things, and that's been a huge shift. He's still not great at understanding me sometimes, but that's okay. I'm not expecting him to change overnight. What matters is that he's trying. And honestly, that's more than I thought he would. But even though things have been better with Greg, there's still a part of me that's unsure. A part of me that still wonders if I'm just one bad moment away from slipping back into that familiar, invisible role I played for so many years. I've learned not to put all my hopes into anyone else, to rely on anyone else for my happiness. But there's a quiet ache that I can't ignore. The ache of feeling like, even when you're finally seen, you're still left wondering if it will last. That ache comes back most strongly when I think about Emily. She hasn't reached out as much as I'd like. She's busy with her life, of course, but I can't help but feel like there's a distance between us that I can't cross. After everything that happened with Greg, I thought maybe Emily and I would grow closer, but it's been hard. The air between us feels thick with unsaid things, and even though we've had some good moments together, I still feel like she's holding back. Maybe it's me. Maybe I'm holding back too. But I can't help but wonder if this is just another phase where I'm too much for her, or where she's too much for me. A few weeks ago, Emily called me and asked if I wanted to meet for lunch. She sounded almost hesitant, and that made my stomach churn. I didn't know what she wanted from me. I didn't know if this was going to be another one of those awkward conversations where we pretend everything is fine when we both know it's not. But I agreed, mostly because I didn't want to keep pushing her away. I wanted to make it work. I wanted to believe that we could get back to where we used to be. We met at the same cafe we always used to go to. It was quiet that afternoon, the soft hum of the coffee shop music filling the space between us. I arrived first and sat down, waiting. My hands were shaking, even though I tried to stay calm. I knew I wasn't prepared for whatever this conversation was going to be. When Emily walked in, her eyes scanned the room, and when she saw me, she smiled. It wasn't a bright smile, but it wasn't strained either. There was something in it, something hesitant. She walked over to the table and sat down, her posture stiff, but trying to be casual. "Hey, Mom," she said softly, setting her purse on the chair next to her. "Thanks for meeting me." "Of course," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "What's going on? You sounded like you wanted to talk." She looked at me for a long moment, then exhaled slowly. "Yeah, I do. I've been thinking about everything, about us, and I think we need to talk about what happened, you know? I've been so wrapped up in my own life that I didn't stop to think about how all of this has affected you. I didn't realize how much I've been taking you for granted." I tried not to let the weight of her words hit me too hard, but I could feel the tension in my chest tightening. I knew this was coming, but hearing it from her, hearing her admit that she hadn't been there for me in the way I needed, stung. "I've felt invisible, Emily," I said quietly. "I don't know how else to say it. I've been invisible to you for so long, and I think I've allowed it. I think I've let myself be invisible, but I can't do that anymore." She looked down, her fingers tapping nervously on the table. "I get it now, Mom. I don't know why it took me so long to realize it, but I want to fix it. I want to be the daughter you need me to be, not just the daughter I want you to be for me. I've been so selfish and I'm so sorry." The words hit harder than I thought they would. I didn't know if I could forgive her, not yet. I didn't know if I was ready to trust her again, to let myself be vulnerable after everything that had happened. I had spent so many years pouring myself into this family, into these relationships, that I wasn't sure I could give any more. "I know you're sorry," I said, my voice tight, "but it's not just about saying the right things. It's about showing up, and I need you to show up, Emily, not just when it's convenient, but when it's hard, because that's what I've been doing for you, for all of you, my whole life. And I can't keep doing it if you're not going to be there, too." She nodded, her eyes full of regret. "I promise, Mom. I will. I'll do better. I'll be there for you, not just when it's easy." The words, as sweet as they sounded, didn't settle the ache in my heart. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that things could change, that we could rebuild what we had lost. But the truth was, I wasn't sure if we could. I wasn't sure if I was ready to give that much of myself again, to put myself in a position where I might get hurt. We sat there in silence for a while, both of us sipping our drinks, the weight of the conversation hanging in the air. Emily wasn't the only one who needed to change. I did too. I had to let go of the resentment, of the years of hurt. I had to find a way to move forward without holding on to the past. Finally, I looked at her and said, "I don't know if we can fix everything, Emily. I don't know if we'll ever go back to how things were, but I'm willing to try. I'm willing to let you try." She smiled, a real smile this time, and for a moment it felt like maybe, just maybe, this wasn't the end of our relationship. Maybe it was the beginning of something new. But the truth was, I didn't know. I didn't know if we'd ever get back to where we were, if the scars could heal. But I was willing to take that step, for me, for us. And that, for now, was enough. As I walked away from the cafe, I felt lighter, but I also felt something else, uncertainty. The future was still uncertain, and I wasn't sure where it would lead. But I was ready to face it, ready to face the pain, the change, and the possibility of a better future. And that was more than I had felt in a long time. The days after that lunch with Emily were a strange mix of relief and lingering uncertainty. Things felt different between us, and I knew we were both trying to navigate this delicate new reality. I didn't know if things would ever go back to the way they used to be, and to be honest, I wasn't sure I wanted them to. The old dynamic had been built on me constantly giving, constantly bending over backwards to make sure everyone else was happy. Now I was trying to build something new, a relationship where I wasn't just expected to give, but also allowed to receive. It wasn't easy. There were still moments of awkwardness between Emily and me. She'd try to initiate conversations about the past, about what went wrong, but I wasn't ready to go down that road yet. Not when it still hurt too much. I wasn't about to unpack the entire history of our relationship just to make her feel better. I had done that for years, trying to make everyone else comfortable, trying to bury my own feelings so I wouldn't rock the boat. But now I was trying to do things differently, and I wasn't going to rush my healing. In the weeks that followed, Emily kept her promise. She showed up more. It wasn't a grand, sweeping change, but it was enough for me to see that she was trying. She called me just to talk, not to ask for favors or advice, but to actually check in. It was subtle, but it mattered. I began to feel less like a distant memory to her and more like a real person she wanted in her life. But there was still something gnawing at me, something I hadn't fully addressed. It was one thing for Emily to show up, to say she was sorry, to acknowledge the past. But what about everyone else? What about the rest of the family? I had spent so much of my life making sure I was the good mother, the dependable grandmother, that I had overlooked the reality that I wasn't the only one who needed to change. And so one evening, as the air began to turn colder and the first hints of fall colored the trees, I decided it was time to confront Greg again. I needed to talk to him about what had happened, about how everything had made me feel. I called him. No texting this time. No hiding behind a few short sentences. I needed to hear his voice to make sure he really understood the weight of what I had been carrying all these years. "Hey, Mom," Greg said when he picked up. His voice was warm, but I could hear the hesitation behind it. I think he knew something was coming. "How's everything?" I exhaled slowly. "I need to talk to you, Greg, about everything, about what happened with Thanksgiving and the photo and how I felt when I saw it." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could almost hear him sorting through his thoughts, trying to figure out what to say next. I didn't think it would hurt you that much," he said, his voice quieter now, more thoughtful. "I really didn't. I thought it would just be easier for you. I thought maybe you wouldn't want to be in the middle of all of it, and I didn't even think about how it would make you feel." I took a deep breath, holding on to my patience. "Greg, it wasn't just the photo. It was everything that led up to it. You've been so busy with your life, with your family, that I started feeling like I wasn't even a part of it anymore, like I was an afterthought. I was always there when you needed me, but when it was time to include me, I was left out." I could hear the regret in his voice. "Mom, I'm sorry. I never meant to make you feel like that. I didn't realize what was happening until it was too late. But I see it now, and I understand why you feel the way you do. I'm sorry." I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. "It's not about being sorry, Greg. It's about showing up. It's about being present. And I need you to understand that I'm not going to keep waiting for you to include me in your life when you feel like it. I'm not just your mom. I'm Linda, and I deserve to be treated like an equal, not like someone who's just there because you have to check a box." There was another long pause, and then Greg spoke again, this time with a sense of finality in his voice. "You're right, Mom, and I've been selfish. I'm sorry it took me so long to realize that, but I want you to know that I'm going to do better. I'll be better." The sincerity in his voice felt like a weight being lifted off my shoulders. I wasn't asking for perfection. I wasn't expecting him to change overnight, but I needed to know that he was ready to meet me where I was, not just where he wanted me to be. "I'm glad to hear that, Greg," I said softly, "but I'm not waiting around anymore. I need to see you put in the effort. I need to see you show up for me, just like I've shown up for you. I need to know that I'm not invisible to you." He didn't say anything for a moment, and then he sighed. "I understand, Mom. I'll make sure you're seen. I promise." That promise, I realized, was something I had needed to hear for a long time. I wasn't asking for everything to be perfect, but I needed to know that I mattered, that I wasn't just a footnote in their lives. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like Greg was finally hearing me. The conversation ended with me feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time: hope. It wasn't a hope that everything would go back to the way it was, but a hope that we could build something new, something better. I wasn't just his mother anymore. I was someone who deserved respect, someone who had a life outside of his expectations. The next few weeks were filled with small, meaningful changes. Greg started reaching out more, not just when he needed something, but just to talk. We went to lunch a few times, and for the first time in years, I felt like we were genuinely connecting. He wasn't just talking at me, he was listening, and I was listening to him too. I wasn't waiting for him to fix everything, but the effort he was making, the steps he was taking, meant more than any apology. Emily, too, had been showing up more, not in the big, dramatic ways that I had expected, but in the little moments, the way she would text me just to ask how my day was, the way she invited me over for dinner and made sure to include me in the conversation. She wasn't perfect, and neither was I, but I was beginning to realize that perfection wasn't the goal. What mattered was that we were both trying, both learning how to be present in each other's lives without the weight of past mistakes hanging over us. But it wasn't just about them. It was about me, too. I had spent so many years letting my identity be defined by others, by the roles I played in their lives. But now I was reclaiming myself. I was reclaiming my time, my joy, and my peace. I wasn't just the woman who had to hold everything together. I was Linda, and that was enough. As the holidays approached, things were quieter. No more big family gatherings where I had to pretend everything was fine. This time it was different. This time I was in control, and I was ready for whatever came next. I wasn't holding on to the past anymore. I wasn't waiting for anyone else to make me feel seen. I had already started to see myself, and that was the biggest change of all. It's funny, isn't it? How much time can pass without you even realizing that the things you've been waiting for, waiting to change, waiting to get better, have already happened. Looking back, I can see that the shift wasn't something sudden. It wasn't a huge, dramatic moment where everything changed overnight. It was small, gradual, just a series of little steps forward, taken one at a time. I used to think I needed validation from my family, from my children. I thought if I just kept showing up for them, they would eventually see me. But I've realized that wasn't the way it worked. I had spent so many years waiting for them to finally notice me, waiting for them to give me the respect I deserved. But I didn't need to wait anymore. I didn't need to wait for them to tell me I mattered. I needed to start showing up for myself. Greg and I have come a long way since that conversation at the cafe. It's not perfect, but we've built something new. We've built trust. We've built respect. We're still working on it, still figuring out how to be there for each other without expectations, without feeling like one of us has to give more than the other. I've learned that I don't have to settle for being just his mother. I'm me first and foremost, and for the first time, Greg sees that. But it's not just Greg who's trying. Emily has shown up, too. Not in the big, dramatic ways I had imagined, but in the small, thoughtful gestures that matter more than anything. She texts me just to check in. She invites me over for dinner without any underlying guilt. It's not perfect, but it's real, and I'm starting to see her, not as the daughter who disappointed me, but as the woman who is trying to do better. One evening after dinner at Emily's house, I was sitting in her living room, a glass of wine in hand, when she turned to me and said, "Mom, I'm really proud of you. I know I've messed up, but you've changed. You're not waiting for anyone anymore." And it's like, I don't know, it's inspiring. I looked at her, a little surprised by the sincerity in her words. "I think you've changed too, Emily. I don't expect you to be perfect. I never did, but I'm seeing you try, and that matters." She smiled at me, and for the first time in a long time, it wasn't just a polite smile. It was the smile of someone who had found their way back to something real, something worth holding on to. And that's when I realized I had already found what I was looking for. It wasn't in some grand family reunion or a perfect apology from my kids. It wasn't about them validating my worth or giving me the recognition I thought I deserved. It was about me. It was about me learning to see myself, to value myself, to stop waiting for anyone else to make me feel like I mattered. I'm not the same woman I was before. I'm not the woman who spent years hoping to be seen, to be acknowledged. I'm the woman who finally learned that I don't need anyone's approval to feel whole. The holidays came and went, and this year was different. I didn't spend them waiting for anyone to remember me. I spent them living, creating new memories, doing things for me. I didn't attend every family event. I didn't bend over backwards to make sure everyone else had what they needed. I took care of myself, and for the first time, it didn't feel selfish. It felt necessary. Greg invited me to Christmas dinner, and I went. Emily called on New Year's Eve, and I answered. But this time, I didn't feel like I was trying to hold on to something that had already slipped away. This time, I felt like I was choosing to be part of their lives, not because I was clinging to the past, but because I had something to offer, something real. And as I sat there, on the couch in Emily's living room, with the warmth of my family around me, I realized that I wasn't waiting for anyone to see me anymore. I wasn't waiting for them to tell me I mattered. I had already figured that out for myself. I had spent so many years thinking that the key to happiness was in other people, my children, my family, their approval. But the truth was, the key to happiness was in me. I had to find it within myself, and once I did, everything changed. I still love my family. I still care about them deeply, but I no longer rely on them to make me feel whole. I've found a sense of peace within myself that I never knew was possible. I've built my own life, my own happiness, and it's been the most freeing thing I've ever done. So as I sit here now, reflecting on everything, I know that I'm not just the woman who used to wait for validation. I'm the woman who now stands tall, proud of who she is, and confident in her own worth. And for the first time in a long time, I'm truly, truly free.